What is your worst vinyl buying experience? I'm curious to hear. Let me know in the comments. I've had a few. I'm sure you have as well. But today I'm going to tell you the story about how I got robbed $200 for this album right here. Oh, hi there. My name's Jorge. I grew up in the 80s and I used to love getting into trouble. I have always been a friend of felines. I take my faith very seriously, attending school at a Christian college, and I've been a music fan my entire life, only recently discovering that I really like extreme metal. And I want to invite you to journey with me on my discovery of extreme metal. What is up, folks? Welcome back to A Christian Collects Death Metal, or in today's case, thrash metal. It's your boy Jorge here, back at it again. Thank you so much for stopping by. Working on a few videos that require a little more research, a little more work, quite frankly. And I thought, you know what, in the meantime, how about I share a story about the time that I got robbed for, a couple $100 over Megadeth's Euthanasia. Now, I don't know how anybody else's experiences are on eBay or Discogs, but I shop those sites quite a bit. You know, I always hear, and I think this is it's just a given, when you hear the term Discogs seller or eBay seller, immediately my mind goes to inflated prices, right? Because these aren't labels or distros that we're dealing with here. These are individual sellers, resellers, private collectors, what have you. And so, yeah, they tend to bump the prices way up. Now, that's not every seller on Discogs or eBay, but that's sort of the reputation that those places have. Well, when I first started getting into vinyl and record collecting, and this was prior to my introduction into death metal, extreme metal, even though I guess thrash is considered extreme metal, I've always thought of it as just regular metal. It just never dawned on me that it was extreme, but I guess that is the case. I've been listening to thrash since I was a kid. Megadeth, Slayer, you name it. And so, yeah, I got me a record player there some years back, and I was seeking out some of these favorite albums that, you know, I loved as a kid growing up. I've never quit listening to these albums. And I would find some Metallica stuff, and it really didn't matter to me if it was a reissue, if it was an original pressing. I just wanted the music, right? So I was searching for Euthanasia, which, if you know, it's notoriously a hard one to get a hold of, especially the early pressings, even the reissues. But I did find one. I found one on eBay, of all places. And now I said earlier, you know, that they're known for inflated prices and just problems, issues. But for the most part, I've had good experiences with both eBay and Discogs, except for the occasional one-offs or several offs here and there. But in this occasion, I found the album on eBay. And let me just say, it's not this actual picture disc. There's no problem at all with this, what I have right here, the picture disc. It's perfect. I think I only gave $40 for this. But I'm talking about an original pressing of Euthanasia that I found. This is one of the best picture discs. You know, you always hear horror stories about bad quality and picture discs, and I guess I've good fortune, but because almost every picture disc I own sounds great, except for Anthrax Among the Living. It is the worst picture disc that I own. It sounds bad, but it's a picture disc. Anyway, this one sounds great, and the other ones that I have for the most part sound great as well. But this was before I got the picture disc, and I found a copy 1994 or 1996 original pressing, UK pressing by the way, on eBay. and it was up for auction, and people were bidding on this. I think it was 6 or 7 people were bidding on this album. It's a sought after album, understandable. Now, if you were to look up prices for the original pressing Euthanasia today, right now, you won't find one under $400. In fact, I've seen them stretch anywhere from $440-ish to about $800. Actually, even higher, right? If they have it plaqued or, framed. And so, it's not cheap. It's not a cheap album, right? But this auction, it was a couple days into it. I think it was a 7-day auction, and the prices were fairly low. Granted, this was several years ago, but I think when I jumped into the auction, it was right around $70, $80, and every so often, a few times a day, someone else would bid. It would bump up, jump up to 90. Next thing you know, it's 110. Day 5 rolls around, 150, and I'm still bidding. I had so much set aside. I said, if it goes beyond a certain limit, I'm out. Maybe next time, right? And so the final day hit, and it was on a weekend. And so I had nothing but just time on my hands, lounging around the house, and I was watching the auction live. And it was getting down to the wire. And I put my bid in. I think I put in 170 right there within like the last minute or so, and I was just waiting, biting my nails. Someone else came in, bumped it up to 175. It was like less than a half a minute left. I put in for 180, and wouldn't you know, I ended up winning the album. I won the auction, I should say. So after shipping and taxes, it was just under $200. And I wish I still had the receipt. This has been years ago, but I wish I still had the original receipts, pictures of everything that I took. But anyway, I had it locked in, right? And I went ahead and paid the guy. So now all I had to do was just wait for the day where I come home from work or the mailman dropped it off at my door. And that did happen. I remember the day that it happened. I was so excited. Brought the package in, carefully tore it open, and pulled out the album. And immediately, and I mean immediately, I knew that this was a bootleg album. What the cover was obviously the image. Now during the auction, as far as pictures, he just had a picture of the album, and it was kind of back a little ways, and it was just one picture. Most people post several pictures. I've seen 7, 8, 9 pictures, show the front, the back, the LP, the insert, and all of that. But this guy just posted one picture, and it was sat in a chair, and it was kind of back a little bit, and it was kind of hard to see. But I didn't really think anything of it at the time because, like I said, multiple people were bidding on this, and I just thought, well, and the guy said, hey, 1996 pressing, Megadeth, and so I just assumed it's got to be legit, right? Well, it wasn't. When I got the actual LP, the image had been blown up, right, and it was fuzzy. It looked like some guy had just printed it off, somehow printed out this in his basement somewhere. Right, so it was very obviously fake. And when I took out the album, it was like a purple maroon variant. Definitely not an original Capitol pressing, right? I know what the label looks like. I know what it should look like. And this was definitely a long way from being that. So my cat's walking around here. Hoping she don't knock that off. Anyway, I was heated. I mean, I was heated. And on here, I'm all calm and collective. And in general, I try to be a nice guy. I try to be courteous toward people and friendly and what have you. Because that's how I would want others to treat me, right? But I was so hot. I mean, I was flames shooting out of my ears, right? Because I had got. And it was my fault, right? I should have known better. The auction, it was just one picture that was not really grainy, but you just couldn't make it. You couldn't really get in close enough to really tell. Even zooming in, it just didn't do any justice. So, it was my fault for falling for it. But that this guy posted, if he would have said, hey, this is a bootleg copy, whatever, but no, he put it out there as though it were an original pressing. And so that's what really, really made me angry. And I gave it a day to think about it, how I wanted to approach it. And when the time came, because I had, like I said, I already paid the guy. He already had my money, and I had the product. I had the thing that he was selling, So when I did reach out to him, I came at him hard. I mean, I came at him hot. I said, look, what I got is not what you listed on eBay. What you sent me is very obviously a fake, a bootleg, an unofficial copy. This is not allowed. It's not authorized on eBay. So not only can you would you lose your seller, they would kick you out of eBay for this, but this is also against the law. It's a felony crime to do this, punishable by, these fines and actually possibly even jail time. So I was spitting out all this stuff, and I didn't even give him a chance to even, I just came in hot. And so when he did respond, he acted like, oh, wait, what? This was an auction, and just, the price jumped up there, and I said, look, you said this was a 1996 original pressing, and I showed him pictures. I took it, everything was documented on eBay. I went about it the right way. That way, eBay knew on their side of things. I reached out to eBay too, and I told them the whole thing. And I told the guy, I said, look, I want to send the record back to you, and I want my money back, right? And I've already reported it to eBay, whatever they do on their end. And, he gave in, shockingly, because a lot of these guys, they'll start an account, right? And they'll put up one of these items, and then once they sell it, then they'll start a new account and try it all over again. Well, I got to give the guy credit because he did issue a refund. And here's the thing. I'm not one of these guys who cancel orders, or even if I get a record that's slightly damaged or something, I don't care about that. I've never canceled an order. I've never asked for a refund in my entire vinyl buying experience, except for this one time. Right? Because I had really felt like, hey, the guy deceived me, and the others, it could have been one of the other guys bidding, and they would have got it, and, it was very deceptive how he listed this particular item, right? And so that's the reason I went forward with it, and let me know, was I right for doing that? Should I have just taken it on the chin and, bit the bullet? I'm curious to hear what you had to say. But I feel like I couldn't take it laying down on this one, right? And I've gotten records where they're even a little chipped around the edges, and they play fine. It's not a big deal. Dinged up covers and stuff. I don't care about none of that, But this particular one, a couple $100, right? The guy said it was something, original pressing, and then I got very obviously a fake, a bootleg, right? It would have been different if he would have listed it as a bootleg, and maybe people would have bidded for it, or maybe not, but, you could get bootlegs for about $40 to $50 for some of those real hard to find popular albums, Sam Hain being one of them, so I don't mind some bootlegs if they're not being reissued, and if it just, sort of a necessary evil. But like I said, this guy was super deceptive. And, at first he was acting like, oh, what? This is crazy. But, he eventually gave in because he really had no choice. You're not allowed to do that on eBay. And Discogs, I don't think you are either, as far as like bootlegs. If you let the person know, that's one thing. But like I said, it was deceptive. Anyway, I eventually settled for a picture disc copy. And this one's actually, like I said, it's really good. This is, Capital Pressing. I think it's from a few years back. But really enjoy this, and I'm happy with this one. And after that one experience, I think this Euthanasia copy is the one that I'm going to stick with. So let me know in the comments below. That's going to be it for today, guys. Thank you so much. Jorge, a Christian, collects death metal, signing off. Be blessed.